close and why the United Nations has paid so much attention to a 1-month-old conflict. They have done nothing, zero, to what is happening in Ambazonia. Last week, OCHA, a United Nations agency based in Boya, convened 2 consultation meetings aimed at ensuring security guarantees for OCHA and 3 other United Nations agencies, including UNICEF, UNHCR, and WPF, for a safe passage to Mengele, BLM County. Their objective was to conduct a situation assessment in the county over the years starting from the outbreak of the conflict. The interim government of Ambazonia and the restoration fighters maintain cooperative relations with OCHA regarding the security and the safety of its humanitarian activities and staff in Ambazonia. However, we made the decision last week to sever these relations, not only with OCHA, but with all United Nations agencies in both Cameroon and Ambazonia. These decisions stem from the perception that the United Nations approach primarily revolves around providing aid, disregarding the core demands of the Ambazonian people for justice and peace. Ambazonians are wary of what they perceive as pacification efforts by the United Nations and its agencies aimed at resolving the conflict in a manner that favors the restoration of control by the Republic of Cameroon. Instead of mere handouts, Ambazonians demand justice and peace in a territory that is not a disaster zone, but a war zone. The continuous provision of aid, symbolized by bread, bananas, and paracetamol, over 7 years has failed to address the root causes of the conflict or facilitate meaningful negotiation for peace. With over 700,000 displaced persons, most of whom reside in La République du Cameroun towns and cities, Ambazonians believe the United Nations should focus on its humanitarian efforts on these populations rather than encroaching on Ambazonian hinterlands, which are under the control of the Ambazonia Restoration Forces. Consequently, the ARF will not facilitate safe passage for any UN personnel and trucks into Ambazonian communities, directing the United Nations instead to concentrate its efforts on the displaced population in neighboring areas like Chang, Mbunda, and the rest. The conclusion drawn is that in this conflict, the United Nations and its agencies have aligned themselves with the oppressor, La République du Cameroun, rather than serving as an impartial mediator. In meetings with OCHA the other day, the United Nations reluctance to acknowledge the situation in Ambazonia as war, or call it war or conflict, underscores its failure to act as an honest and neutral arbiter. This failure is reflected in the United Nations' minimal attention to the Ambazonian conflict compared to its swift action in other global conflicts like in Gaza and Russia, Ukraine. While the United Nations could leverage La République du Cameroon's commitment to a ceasefire and negotiate settlement, it has thus far failed to do so. Consequently, Ambazonia has decided not to grant any United Nations agency, including the UNDP, access to its hinterlands. The way forward, as stipulated by Ambazonia, entails a ceasefire as a precondition for any UN agency's access to Ambazonian territory. Failure to adhere to this condition means that all United Nations agencies travel in Ambazonia at their own risk. A directive that has been communicated to the Ambazonia restoration fighters. In essence, Ambazonia's stance reflects a deep-seated frustration with the United Nations approach to the conflict and a firm commitment to pursuing justice and peace on its own terms. The ball now lies in the United Nations court.